Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today's conversation is really focusing about how do you find your joy no matter what circumstances you put yourself in. How do you overcome challenges of being a woman to being in an industry sector that is very male dominated? My guest today did just that. Leilani Hartley is a surgeon first class, served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan with the US Army, and took on the toughest training in the Rangers School. She's won many awards in bodybuilding and bikini competition. One thing I really want to talk to her about is understanding the discipline, the ruthlessness that goes on behind the scene to get yourself motivated and train ready. Also, being in a very male-dominated industry, the sector, how does she find her joy? How does she overcome the challenges that being a woman presents when being in the army? Another question we'll be talking to her about is, she's been in Iraq, she's been in Afghanistan. What are some of the challenges that she saw when she was living there? And how did she manage to navigate it to still find her own joy? Most exciting is that she went on to do bodybuilding and bikini competition. How did she go through that brutal training to get her body just fit and ready for those competitions? And what joy did it bring her? Her hope and inspiration for the army, and how to encourage more and more women to get into this sector. Meet my amazing guest, Leilani Hartley, as we share her wonderful, beautiful story of living with any kind of challenges, but still find your joy. Just remember, she's also had some surgeries over the years, but she still managed to get herself together and find her joy. Meet Leilani. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, today's conversation is one of inspiration. One of, it doesn't matter what condition and what you're doing, how do you find your joy in your profession? Well, my guest did just that. I'll tell you a little bit about her. Leilani Hartley is a surgeon first class, served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan with the US Army, and took on the toughest training in the ranking school. She's also won many awards in bodybuilding and bikini competition. Guys, how did she find the time? Leilani, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well. I'm super honored to have you. And thank you so much for your time for joining me, because I know how precious time is in your field of work, how everything has to be consigned and everything has to be timed rightly. And you took the time out to join me. So I'm so honored for this. Before we get started with everything you do, can you tell us a little bit about, if anyone asks you, who are you? What would you say?
Gosh, it's so hard. Who am I? I am just a person, honestly, who likes to work out and have fun at work. I enjoy my job. And I just got promoted, actually. So on the 1st of October, and now I run a company. I'm the highest enlisted ranking person in my company now. And I just love to train. It's just been that way since I was younger. My dad, got me into working out and stuff. And that's really who I am. I'm just carefree and just love people and my job and love to work out and try to make the absolute best out of all situations, actually.
How did you get into the army? Because a lot of people might be wondering, how did you get into it? What was your background like growing up?
So my mother was in the Army. She was a drill sergeant. And I was very, very against joining any type of military when I was growing up. I was like, I'm not doing it. And I did JRTC when I was in high school. And when I got out, I decided that I didn't want to go to school. So my dad was like, I think personality wise, you should join the Air Force. And I was like, yeah, that might be the best bet for me. I joined the Air Force. I did a 2-year contract, didn't really like it. Got out, and I decided that I still needed structure, institutionalized. I still needed some structure. So I decided to join the Army, and that's where I've been ever since.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations, though. You've done really well by sticking out because it's not an easy path to be on. You spent 11 years in the military and have risen to the ranks of sergeant, first class, and the highest rank of a non-commissioned officer. I'm sure you just said you got promoted, so probably even more senior back than this. What in your childhood influenced this path of working so hard and wanting to be, in this very high position?
Honestly, I don't think it's anything in my childhood. I am one of the most competitive people that you will ever meet in your entire life. Like everything that I do is a competition. I don't know if that's healthy, 100% of the time, but I'm definitely a very competitive person. So just trying to do better than mostly myself and then others, because this is a male dominated, line of work, being in the Army. So, and they always find it, they always find time to compete with me. So then I turn it into a competition, all the time. And I compete. That's all I do. That's all I've been doing my entire life, is just competing. And it just requires you to work hard at the things that you like to do to try to be the best that you can be.
I love what you said. You said, I love to compete, but mostly, first and foremost, myself. Because
Yeah.
this is the mistake a lot of people make. They like to compete, then they go out there and start competing with others. But once you learn how to compete with yourself, then you give yourself that strength and you prepare yourself to go out there
Mm-hmm.
and compete with others. And that was something so beautiful. You said it spot on. I like to compete firstly with myself. You went on various tours of you did a combat. You did the combat in Iraq. You did the Afghanistan. How did that change your views of life? Just going in there.
It made me realize how much people in America take things for granted. Um, everything from the smallest thing to being able to use a toilet that flushes and you don't have to like crouch in a hole, or um, or any right there, yeah, or anything like that. Like um, Afghanistan is worse than Iraq, so it's not as up to date as Iraq is. And so their living conditions are even worse. And it just makes you take for granted, even just like waking up and going 2 feet to use the bathroom, because in Iraq or Afghanistan, you don't have bathrooms inside of wherever you're living. You have to get up, you have to put your clothes on, you have to walk outside, you have to grab your weapon, you have to go to the bathroom, then you come back. You know what I mean? Like it's a whole like ordeal. So when you wake up in the middle of the night and you decide that you want to have to use a bathroom, you're like, do I really have to use it that bad? Or can it wait like a couple more hours until I actually have to get up? It's just little things like that. And when you get ready to like leave your deployment, that's all you can think about. It's like, I just can't wait to just get up and not have to put shoes on to take a shower. Like you have to wear flip-flops and stuff all the time. So it's the littlest things that you take for granted that makes me realize like how good we have it in America. That's a lot of the things that have changed me a lot.
I love, especially leading up to Christmas, when we hear the news all the time talking about people not getting Christmas presents. And then you say, taking the littlest thing for granted, because sometimes we live in this perfect world where everything is done for us, and we forget that there's some people out there that don't even have that. And you just described it that we should, hopefully, from this message, people will learn that it doesn't matter what you have. It might be so painful right now, but be mindful that people are going through worse times and maybe more self-position than you are. So try to appreciate the moment and see only how you could make it better.
Mm.
That is just so beautiful, and I'm so glad, you started it on that it is the smallest thing. Because sometimes we always think, I thought your answer would be, it's hard to be out there, it's just all this. But sometimes we forget it actually is the smallest thing that makes a huge difference. Um, as an SFC, I had to research what an SFC means, which is a Sergeant First Class
Mm-hmm.
officer. That's a very, very difficult rank to obtain. I mean, you need to be on your game. You need to be on point. I was researching it. Not very many women get to that position because it takes a lot of commitment. Can you describe some of the attributes that were needed for you to get to this position, the sergeant first class?
So right now I'm a master sergeant, so that's a rank above a sergeant first class. So like I said, I got promoted in October, and either one. So I think being a sergeant first class, you're usually a platoon sergeant. So you are in charge of however large your platoon size is. It could be as small as 20 people. It could be as large as 50. It is very difficult because when you're in the Army and you reach a senior rank like sergeant first class or master sergeant, your responsibility is not yourself anymore. Your responsibility is 50, 60 different other people's issues, and yours gets pushed down to the bottom. So mentally, it's hard because you wear yourself down trying to juggle all the other soldiers' problems, because everybody's problem is just as important as the next. And you kind of forget about your own mental health and your own issues, because you have to put them away, so much to deal with everybody else's problems. That's probably the most difficult part, is trying to juggle the soldiers' needs, trying to juggle your unit's needs, the Army's needs, and then somewhere way down at the bottom is your needs. And at some point you got to figure out like where can you attack those things that are issues for you. And sometimes it's hard to juggle all of those things at once. That's probably the most difficult thing about it.
So why did you choose to go through the down the path of being an Army Ranger?
So I'm not a Ranger. I didn't make it through the school. I have a friend that I know who did actually make it. She's awesome. I always wanted to do things that other people weren't doing, and my mom, when I was younger, took me to see G.I. Jane. And as cliche and as much as that is like the most not like fictional thing ever, it let me know that women were capable of like doing anything basically. And I wanted to do that. So oddly enough, before they even opened up Ranger School, I had a male mentor who was Ranger. He was a captain. He always talked to me about everything. And I was like, have there been any girls who've gone to Ranger School? And he was like, no. And I was like, is that even a thing? Like, are we able to do that? And he was like, why don't you just find out? So I started doing all this research on my own. And maybe 4 months later, the Army put out this message saying that females are now allowed to go to Ranger School. And I was like, this is fate. This is what's supposed to happen. But as an enlisted person, when we first started that, the officers were allotted more opportunities to go down there and train and be more physically, mentally ready for the school. And the enlisted people like myself were basically told, get in where you fit in, find out where you can do your training, but you still have your regular job to do. Like we couldn't leave and go do that extra training that everybody else could. So when I went to the school, I was not as mentally or physically prepared as I thought I was, because I was doing all of it on my own and just trying to like pick and weed out the things that, I thought would be important during that time. I also think that me wanting to be the first, Black female to make it through, I was wanting to do all these things. And I think it was selfishly, I wanted to do them, and not because I wanted to show like other African-American females that we can do it or stuff like that. Like I wasn't thinking for everybody else. I was just thinking for me. And I also think that had a severe backstop for me. You know what I mean? Like it was like I was being super, super hard on myself when it was enough for me just being there. And I realized that, a couple of years later afterwards, and I was like, I think mentally and physically, I could go through and do it again, no problem. Do I have the opportunity to? Maybe, maybe not. I've had a few knee surgeries and things like that, but it was just, I just want to do things to show other females, other people that regardless of injuries or past, whatever, like you can do anything you want, accomplish anything.
But You know, when you're in the army, it requires so much mental and physical strength. You need to be prepared for anything, especially when you're in Iraq, Afghanistan, anything can happen. How do you prepare yourself mentally and physically for the challenges that you come across, even for the training?
Mentally, I think the thing that keeps me going is number one, everybody else is going through it with you. So if they're sucking, you're sucking. You know what I mean? So it kind of helps block that out. You're not, if you were out there doing push-ups, 1,000 push-ups by yourself, you know, chances are you're probably not going to make it. But if there's 20 people out there doing 1,000 push-ups with you, like you're not going through it by yourself. So it kind of makes it easier. Same thing, you know, with everything in the military, you're never doing anything by yourself. So it kind of it kind of makes it a little bit easier to deal with it, because you know what, the person to my left and my right are probably depending on me for some motivation, and I'm depending on them for motivation. If they're not going to stop, then I'm not going to stop. That's how I prepare for anything. And when we get ready to deploy, it's not just me going, it's everybody going. So I'm talking to them, they're talking to me. What are your worries? You know, these are my worries, and we all together are going to make it through. So because it's such a large team, it just helps us so much.
So, you know, you're a female woman. Do you find you're treated differently because you're female? You're also ethnicity. You're a Black woman. Do you struggle? Army, when I think of the army, and ever since I've been watching every movie, I've always just seen male, male, male. It's very hard. You see that it's rare. You see women, and a Black woman. How did you find yourself fitting in? This is for other women who are thinking of, look, I really think this is something. This is my calling. It's something I want to do. I'm very competitive. It's something I want to go, but I don't see a lot of women doing this. What would you say?
Oh, this is sadly a conversation that my mother was having in the military 30 years ago, and women before them were having in the military, you know, 20 years ago or 20 years before that. And it's so sad that we're still having this conversation. And it's very difficult because as a female in the military in a male dominated world, sometimes you automatically feel like when you walk into a room, you have to hold your own a little bit more than everybody else does because you are a female. So you're kind of judged right off the bat, like hair, nails, uniform, who is she, how did she get here, things like that. When I got promoted, I put it in my speech. I said, you know, a male can walk into a room and he can, you know, talk sternly to a soldier or whatever. And they're like, yeah, you know, he's all about business. He's this, he's that, he's by the book. But if a female walks in and she's stern to the same soldier and says the same thing, has the same attitude, oh, well, I don't understand why she's so mean. I don't understand why that she must be on her period, you know, things like that. And I'm like, it shouldn't be that conversation. It should be, you know, it should be the same. Like, she's stern, she's got standards, like she's army. Unfortunately, we still kind of fight that fight. It just happens to be that way. It's getting better. I will admit it is getting a lot better. The more females are putting to these positions of first times, it's getting better, but it's still a fight that we are having to have conversations about constantly.
And hopefully in a few years' time, we won't be having the same conversation, because your mother's gone through it, many other generations have gone through it. We're hoping in the future, the conversation should be something different, not focus on that specific question. It should be more focused on questions about how you're enjoying it or how you can motivate other people to join it, not specifically on the gender rate issue. You are in the army, but you know, you are such a fascinating person. You are an award-winning bikini model and bodybuilding. That takes discipline. You know, it takes years in the gym, it takes perfection. Because starting from I say to people, starting from the strand of your hair to the toes of your feet, everything needs to be perfect. what led you on this path, and how did you try and say, okay, I'm taking my break from the army to go into this role? How did you think this is something you wanted to do?
I was coming back from Afghanistan, and it was right when bodybuilding or bikini competitive bodybuilding was just becoming like a thing. And I told my ex-husband, I was like, I think I want to try that just one time, just to see like what it's like. Uh, I and it was a competition, so I was like, why not? It's what I need to do anyway. And I did it. I found a team, and it was fun. And I just happened to get first place at my first show ever. And I was like, I want to keep doing this. And I hadn't really researched what it was to be like a bikini competitor. And then after that, I started like, you can go and you can get a pro card, you can be a pro athlete, you can do all these things and compete. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And then there's the hair. I just had to figure out like which section I wanted to do. Did I want to do bikini, or did I want to put on a little bit more muscle and be figure? Or like I always battled between those two. And I had a lot of self-esteem issues. So I didn't really want to be a figure competitor because I felt like everybody would think I look like a man and I'd have too much muscle. So I decided to, unbeknownst to me, I decided to fight my body's like natural build and just attack bikini full on and be a bikini competitor. So it was, yeah, it was great.
And does it take lots of work to get your body to the way you have to position it? And what's a typical routine like for you?
So when I was competing in bikini, like everything else, sports, everything there, it goes through changes. Like it starts one way, and then as these new athletes come in, everybody starts to change and standards start to get higher. So you would have to go through phases where you would build more muscle and then have to strip away all the fat, and then build more muscle in your off season, strip away all the fat. Um, so like a typical day, it would depend on like what phase you were in your prep, basically. Uh, Closer to a show, it would be get up super early in the morning before PT and do 45 minutes of cardio, and then eat my first meal, then go do PT, then eat my second meal. Then during lunchtime, probably do some more cardio. However much cardio was lined out in my routine from my coach, I would split that up during the daytime so I didn't spend 4 or 5 hours in the gym after work. And then I'd eat 2 or 3 meals before, and then I would go back to the gym in the evening time, do my lifting, finish up the rest of the cardio, eat my last meal, go to sleep, and wake up and do it all over again every single day for 16 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's for 16 weeks. And did you have any cheat days at all?
Yes. So Saturdays would be our cheat day because it would be like our really heavy leg day. And so all meals and things would be eating normal, and then you'd work out really hard, and then I usually go to Applebee's. I was like right down the street from the gym, and I'd get a burger with fries, and I'd go right next door and get 2 donuts from Dunkin' Donuts and all this stuff. And then I would be like, yeah, it was worth it. In my mind at the time, I thought, yes, all of that during the week was worth that burger, fries, and donuts on a Saturday.
All the hard work. Okay, I could just really crunch and really eat this burger and fries. I don't blame because you did it, and you were so perfect. You're good at it. Does that come with your consistency from being in the army? Did that army prepare you for the bikini, the bodybuilding side? Did that help with the discipline side of it?
Yes, definitely.
Mm.
It's so bad. I'm so institutionalized as far as like structure is concerned in the army. So the fact that I would have to structure my day around the army and working out in all things, I was on a very regimented schedule. Like I knew that I had to be up at this time and doing cardio by this time. The latest I could start my cardio was this time. And like the latest I could leave the house to make it to PT on time was here. So I would have to finish my cardio 15 minutes beforehand. So you know what I mean? That's how structured my life was. And it did make it easier as far as the discipline to keep that going. Cause that's all I've ever known really is the timelines and regimented schedules. So it makes that part where people struggle, I didn't struggle at all.
Mm. You talked about being injured. Did that happen when you were in the army? And how did you overcome the challenge of being injured and being able to come back again? Because I think this is a challenge a lot of people face, is that either they have a chronic illness or they've gone through a bad patch in their life. And the trouble they find is that ability to come back again, come back to do something even stronger than before. But you did manage to do that. How did you do it?
My first ACL tear was before I went to Iraq in 2008, I believe. And it hit me hard because I was used to working out, not as much as, now. But like running and PT, I didn't want to be on a profile to not run. So I was determined to get off of that. And I had a timeline for myself. Like I wanted to be off of my profile by this time. I wanted to be running by this time. I wanted to be running 2 miles in 14 minutes in this time. The second time I blew out my knee was 2016. It was my right knee. And this injury was way worse than the left one. I blew out cartilage. I blew out everything. ACL gone, cartilage gone, cartilage,
Yeah.
meniscus gone. It was bad. And for a while, the doctor told me that I wouldn't be able to run. I wouldn't be able to squat. I wouldn't be able to do leg extensions. Like I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that I was used to doing because of how extensive my injury was and the surgeries that I had to do to like fix it. So that's how I discovered CrossFit because I needed to do something else other than bodybuilding because it wasn't helping. That's one of the reasons why, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but like mental and things like that were other reasons. But that I just am not good at being sedentary. I think that's the word is, like where you're just sitting and not doing anything. Like I'm not good at that. So I'm constantly looking for things to improve myself if I get into a situation like that. So I think honestly, getting injured may have even been a blessing because it caused me to figure out how to work around being injured and be better on the other side. So I think I don't want anybody to get injured, but I think for me mentally, I think that helped a lot.
Because finally you were able to sit down and not do anything that was your typical routine, but do something outside your typical routine, things you probably haven't been paying attention to a lot, but this time you paid more attention to. How was the healing process? What did you do differently that aid the healing that you were able to get back to it?
I followed the Army's their physical therapy program for a little bit, but nothing against the Army's physical therapy program, but their program is geared towards getting everybody with the same injury back into fighting condition, not necessarily back into the workout condition that you were used to. You know what I mean? So if I'm functioning on a higher athletic level and I hurt myself, the Army is just concerned about getting you back to the way that you can function with the Army. I'm concerned about getting myself back to the athletic performance that I was doing beforehand. So we're on two totally different levels. So I would do a lot of research to figure out, like outside of that, what other people were doing with this injury. What were they doing before? What are they doing now? And things that they did to get better. And obviously I know my body, so I know if it's going to hurt, if I need to pull back, if I can push forward more. And so once I got out of the mandatory physical therapy portion of my healing after it, I stopped going and I did everything on my own.
I have to ask, every day is not a great day for a lot of people, right? Especially if you're in this environment and you're missing loved ones, you're missing family. How do you find it in yourself to find your joy when you're in a state of, okay, today's not my day, I'm not feeling great, no one understands me, it's not going accordingly. Or especially when you're in Afghanistan and you're on this mission, and it's something, not every day is perfect. How do you find it in yourself to find your joy and keep going?
That's a really hard question because some days some days it's just not any joy that you can find. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure it's there, but you're in a mental state of like the world is almost crashing down on you. It's hard to find that joy. But usually when I go to sleep in my bed and I wake up the next morning and I'm like, you know what? Today is not going to be as bad as it was yesterday. And I usually just find that my saving grace for me 98% of the time is the gym. And I explained this to somebody because they asked me why I worked out so much, and I could never explain why, but I know why now. In a world where in the Army, everything is dictated by somebody else for me to do. My schedule is dictated by somebody else. My uniform is dictated by what I have to wear. My hair is dictated by how it has to be worn. You know, in a world where I have no control over anything, really, the gym is the one place I have control over everything. I control my emotions. I control what I put on the bar. I control what I lift. I control how I feel. I control the music that I listen to. I control how hard I'm going to go, how much I'm going to rest. Like it is my world that I can control in there. And it makes me feel at peace because I have that control.
That's pretty beautiful. People would be so amazed to hear that answer. But I guess when you have a bit of control of certain things, that gives you that your joy because you could play your music and that relaxes you and make you happy. You know, when you were recognized in this bikini modeling, how did that make you feel winning all this competition? How did you feel?
Um, when I first started, it made me feel good because I was winning. And I was kind of having fun with it. I was still competing. I was still, but later on, I started to realize, when we go to these national shows and try to get our pro card, I started to realize that we were doing all of this stuff for 16 weeks and eating and dieting and cardio and not eating. And sometimes you cheat and you have to like do extra cardio to make up for it, and minimalizing your social life and cutting off friends. And you get on the stage for 5 minutes maybe, and you have somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know what you've been through, who may have been a competitor at one point, but is like old and washed up now. And they are going to tell you that you don't look as good as you thought you did. And you're dismissed basically. And I started to realize like, that's not healthy because it was creating unhealthy eating habits for me. Like I was doing more cardio than normal. I was cutting my already small portion meals in half more to just, if I could sustain being hungry to my next meal with a half portion to make my body look better, then I would be okay. Staring at myself for hours in the mirror, posing constantly. If there was some excess skin somewhere, I'd buy like the sweatsuits to make me to sweat more when I was doing more cardio, the diuretics you take, the water loss pills, it was not, in my head, I thought it was fun because I was achieving what I thought these people wanted me to look like, but it wasn't making myself happy. So, and I didn't realize it until I stopped competing. I thought I was happy that whole time, but I wasn't. But it was stopped and found, CrossFit, that I realized that whole 7 years of my life, I was never happy, like not one time.
It's truly amazing because sometimes what we think is giving us the greatest joy, when that thing sometimes is suddenly taken away from us, or when we decide to stop doing that thing, we then have a flashback and say, what were we really thinking? How did we think this was actually giving us any joy when you're being scrutinized? You're not being able to live the best life of your own life. You are living on someone else's terms, someone else sitting down there and telling you, oh, this is what they see as perfect, and not you. You've left your own imagination of perfect, relying on someone else to define perfection for you. So I see where you've come from there, because I think this is where society is. There's a big misgap in society, especially with the social media now, where people let the media define to them what is perfect, rather than them sitting back and saying, this is perfect. In your own views, what would your word of encouragement be to other young girls who are struggling, who probably confused, but I've not found that I need to find my own on my own path here. What would be your message of hope to these young girls?
Um, a lot of people always message me and ask me, they were thinking about getting into, bodybuilding or competing bikini because they see my pictures and stuff like that. And I tell them, I say, do it. Like, I'm not going to tell you no. You might find more joy in it than I do, or I did. So I'm not going to tell them no, but I do give them warning signs, basically, kind of things that I've noticed across my friends who are competing and myself, that if you notice that you start surfing on Instagram, looking at people who you're competing with and seeing what you think is perfect on them, and then going and comparing yourself to it and doing exercises to try to get to look that way, that's a warning sign. When you start cutting off your friends and not going out and doing things because you're afraid that you might eat something that's not in your diet, then that's a warning sign. When you feel that the way you look on stage is some way that you need to look 24 hours a day, every day, that's a warning sign. So I tell them, look for those signs. If it makes you happy, then by all means, it makes you happy. But if you start to notice small declines in your mental health and things like that, you might want to just think about maybe taking a break or trying to figure out something else and then coming back to it and realizing, you love it or you don't love it. But competing in bikini is not the end of the world. There's only a select few people who are going to make money from it. There's only a select few people who are going to be professional athletes with it. So don't get caught up in trying to be that. Don't years and years and years spent chasing a pro card. Don't get caught up in that, but do it because it's fun.
Leilani, I'm so honored to talk to you. I have to ask you the final question before I let you go. I always look at the whole picture for life. And when I look at life, I always say life is so beautiful. You started this conversation by saying you're a very competitive person. That's probably what drove you to this side you are in, because the army is a very competitive world. There's a lot of dedication, there's a lot of hard work needed to achieve your kind of success. Not many people can get there. There's a lot of commitment, there's a lot of sacrifices in everything you've done to be at the level you are, even in the bodybuilding exercise, the bikini exercise, modeling. You dedicated, you always commit, and you always give in 100%. What would be your words of encouragement to anyone out there who don't find it in them, especially after the pandemic? There's this challenge getting people back to work, for example, getting people back to where they thought they were. That commitment, what would be your words of advice to people who are struggling to find that discipline to keep going?
The biggest thing that we people do, and the Army doesn't do a lot of things perfect, but I think they teach this perfectly. When you are goal setting or you're trying to think of what you want your end state to be, everybody sees this big picture and they don't really have a path to get there. They just know that there's this big picture. And a lot of times they're going down this road, then they change this road, and they change this road, and they have all these different ideas of how they need to get to this end state, whether it's being a CrossFit person or a bikini person or just finding a job or whatever, that they don't look at it with, the Army says 50-meter targets, 100-meter targets, 150-meter targets. So start small. However, whatever your end goal is, write it down. And then you write down your stepping stones of how you're going to get there. And then tackle those. Because when you start tackling the 50-meter target, it kind of motivates you. And you're like, okay, I got that done. What's next? And then you get so excited and so motivated to complete the thing at the 100-meter target. And you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. Now it's time for the 150. And by that time, you're so excited about the changes in your life or the things that are happening that you're ready to start knocking down like 200-meter targets, 300-meter targets. You're motivated. You're ready to do it now. I think so many people focus on what they see at the end of the road and not enjoy all the tiny rewards that you get trying to get to your goal. And that's what helps so much. I teach that to soldiers. I still do that with myself. I'm like, okay, I want to go to the CrossFit games.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not going to get there tomorrow. So what do I need to do? Small things to help me get there. And it's competing, it's going to the gym every day, it's hitting these goals, it's hitting these bar muscle ups, it's handstand walking 25 feet first and then 50 feet next. It's those things, and you keep adding to those goals, and it makes you so happy, and it, like, the sense of accomplishment just makes you want to do more. So stop chasing this huge goal, because it's going to be there. Chase the little tiny goals that give you hope, and you'll get there eventually. So
That's beautiful words. Chase the tiny goals that give you hope, and then you get to your bigger goal eventually. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate speaking to you and sharing your wonderful insight. I wish you the very best. What are you up to these days? What next for you?
oh goodness, we actually are preparing to go to the field for 21 days. So I'm going to be out and about in the field with no showers, no nothing for 21 days. So that's what we're actually preparing for now. And then, Christmas holidays and things like that. I'm going to compete a little more when I, get out of the field. Yeah, just little tiny goals every day. We have the CrossFit Open coming up, so that's what I'm going to train for, and just head on, just keep doing what makes me happy and dealing with soldiers every day. And that's, what brings me joy. So
Enjoy that. And I wish you guys the very best for your 21 days. Leilani, thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
thank you.